Everybody to our September 22nd meeting. We have several ways to participate in our meeting this evening, which I will run through briefly. You're welcome to join us via Zoom. The meeting ID is 870-7844-3425, and the login password is 194912. You're also welcome to view the live stream online at the walnutcreek.org website, cable broadcast, and YouTube. So with that, can we start with welcome and roll call?
We can, and I'd like to note that tonight is a special meeting of the Design Review Commission.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Roll call. Commissioner Killian.
Here.
Commissioner Krelling.
Here.
Commissioner Gorney.
Here.
Vice Chair Valia.
Here.
Chair Case.
Here. Thank you. So item number 2, we have our consent calendar. So this is any item may be placed on the consent calendar, which was an item expected to be routinely approved.
Staff would recommend that item 4A be moved to the consent calendar.
I have 2 comments on that item, and I said I'd like to keep it on regular agenda.
Okay, so it stays. All right, so item number 3, public communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items that are not on the agenda. So we will ask if you're participating in the Zoom to use the raise hand feature to let us know if you'd like to make a comment. And we'll be monitoring for that.
I'm seeing none.
Okay, so then with that, we can move on to item number 4, public hearing. So we'll start with Byron Park Residential Care Facility.
Madam Chair?
Oh, yes, Commissioner Killian.
I'm sorry, I have to recuse myself
Thank you.
on that, so I'm going to step away.
Thank you. See you in a few. Okay, so with this one, being as they're just seeking an extension, Chip, I'm asking you, should we go through the same process where there's a presentation, or is it just Commissioner Gorney can express his concern and we address that specifically?
I can just give a short overview of the project.
Really, I just have 2 specific questions on irrigation. So, I mean, there's nobody here other than staff, so it may not be necessary unless you want to, you may just want to answer my questions. It just seems to do a presentation seems unnecessary. Unless you think it has to be done for, legal reasons.
Oh, we do. I was just going to say we do have the applicant here, so can answer any questions.
They are. Okay, good.
So are we able to skip the presentation and just go directly to questions? We can still open it to the public for comment, but it sounds like unless other commissioners feel the need to see a presentation again.
For the general public, it might be a good idea just to introduce the project and say what it is. Byron Park was a construction of a new 2-story 40-unit residential care facility building to the existing building. The existing building is 187 units. It included a covered parkway at the original approval on April of 2017. And they came back in 2018 for an extension of that. Later, and I believe that was in 2019, they came in with an amendment or a design change to that addition. Didn't affect any units or parking or anything like that, but it did away with the covered, or changed that covered walkway, which kind of reset the time clock. The applicant then, in August of this year, submitted an extension request for a 2-year extension for those reasons that are outlined in the memorandum. I would say that the project has an approved site development permit, and it's also in its 3rd round of building plan check. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. So Commissioner Gorney, could you give us your question of the applicant or of staff?
Yeah, there's 2 items I had questions on, and I actually talked to Chip briefly about them this afternoon, and I'm still a little just a little concerned or just I don't understand. One thing is that I thought that irrigation for bioretention areas had to be on a separate irrigation valve system because it uses a different kind of soil and different planting because of what is growing in it. And I realized on this project that they're not on separate irrigation. There's like 5 retention basins, and they're not on separate irrigation. And the other one was I saw that they use subsurface drip irrigation throughout. And again, I know the project was done a few years ago, and maybe the rules have changed. I didn't know that using kind of a drip an underground drip irrigation. I think it might make it for Wheelo, but I don't think it conserves water. So I noticed it, I was doing another project and it kind of came to my attention, and I just wanted to bring it up and ask the question on both. Okay, so you may know better than me as far as both of those. And again, we may not be able to get an answer on it today, but the key was I just want to make sure it's on the record and somebody checks.
Well, let's go ahead and see if the applicant can address the concern.
Okay, the applicant is here.
Yes, Chip, this is Axel Garrett with Kisco Senior Living. I have to apologize, but it's a pretty specific question that I'm not prepared to answer today. So I'd like to ask permission to get back to you with a response on that, if that's okay.
Let's see, there is another applicant with their hand raised. I'll promote them.
Thank you.
It's okay, it should be in now. That would be MJ.
Muted.
MJ, did you want to add to or respond to that?
Yes, MJ Ritchell with Kisco Senior Living. At the time that we're prepared to pull a building permit, we'll be happy to address these 2 items as part of the permitting process, and we'll be sure to be in compliance with the codes that are then in effect as it relates to any kind of retention for drainage purposes, irrigation, etc.
That's fine. I just wanted to bring it to staff's attention.
We appreciate that.
So Chip, what's the mechanism to make sure that's addressed in order to grant the extension so that we know that that is?
Okay, so I've been in touch with the city's engineering department, and I was in one of our trackers we have the SDP as approved, but it hasn't been approved, which is to we'll make sure that it's up to current requirements. So the SDP is still in review. I gave you bad information. It was there was some trackers, project trackers that showed it as complete issued, but it's not. So it'll be reviewed, and those all those things are part of the review.
Great. Yeah, and I believe those things are required other than the technique for being low water, but the valving technique is required by the state. So that'll happen.
What I did see in the file was a WELO certification.
Mm-hmm.
And that's current, I'm assuming.
Correct.
I mean, do you want us to do a resolution? I mean, to approve this with additional conditions, or is it something staff will take care of in permitting?
Well, I think those things are requirements during the permitting.
Okay, so we don't need it. We can make a motion to approve the extension.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to approve the extension.
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner Gorney,
Yes.
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Vice Chair Villia,
Yes.
Commissioner Prelling,
Yes.
and Commissioner Killian. Oh, Commissioner.
Yes, for this one.
He's abstained.
Okay. All right. That is a wrap on 4A.
Wonderful. Okay, so with that, I'm not entirely sure how to get Commissioner Killian back. Maybe he has somebody on watch, but when he comes back, we'll move on anyway, and hopefully he'll join us shortly on item 4B, which is Holden of Walnut Creek Senior Living Community. So if we can have staff, hi Haley, give us our presentation.
Yes, thank you. While I get it loaded, hopefully Commissioner Killian will join.
I got the memo.
Great. Great. So for the record, my name is Haley Crawford, a senior planner here with the City of Walnut Creek. Tonight, I will be presenting a study session for a project known as Holden of Walnut Creek. It's a senior living community proposed at 1220 Rossmore Parkway. Before I get into the project details, I wanted to mention that the staff received 2 items of public comment earlier, one yesterday, one this morning, and both of those have been forwarded to all the commissioners, as well as posted online as an attachment to this agenda item. So those are accessible online as well. So I'll start with some site context. The subject property is highlighted here in blue, located just north of the Tice Valley Boulevard Rossmore Parkway intersection. It's also zoned Plan Development 930, which Plan Development 930 also includes the property directly to the east. So the subject site currently contains former medical office, now vacant, building on site. And other kind of adjacent uses that are similar to the proposed use include the Atria Valley View residential care facility at the far right of your screen, the east of this project site, accessed off that Rossmore Parkway Court. And there are 2 skilled nursing facilities also in the adjacent vicinity, and then Rossmore Shopping Center is directly across Rossmore Parkway to the west. Actually, while here, this is maybe a good time to point out there's some unique features of the site. You'll see where the existing building currently sits. To the south of that, there's a significant slope in the topography that slopes downward towards Tice Valley. So diving a little bit in just some existing conditions of the site. As I mentioned, it was a former medical office building. Some images showing that existing condition. And the other thing I will just point out here with that top image, the site is accessed both off Rossmore Parkway and off Rossmore Parkway Court, which is that kind of private easement area to the north. And currently there are a series of curb cuts along Rossmore Parkway Court, which serve as kind of extensions of the parking drive aisles. You can see that both in the site plan and in that upper image. I want to highlight that here because I'll talk about that in the site plan, the proposed site plan, because the applicant, as part of the project, is going to be eliminating most of those curb cuts and instead having a continuous frontage along that with just 2 access points. So now getting into some of the project requests. Again, tonight is a preliminary study session on the project. And the existing medical office building will be demolished. And the proposal is to construct a new 2-story residential care facility for the elderly, also known as RCFE, with an overall square footage of 1,113 square feet, 139 units, and 146 beds. There will be a basement level also included in that, various amenity spaces, and the application also includes site landscaping and 67 surface parking spaces. I want to highlight the staff report mentioned, obviously the proposed FAR as 0.55, and I want to highlight that that is incorrect using the net lot area. The proposed FAR is actually 0.59, so I just want to highlight that for the commission. So here's a proposed site plan. You'll see that the building kind of general footprint area still remains to the south of the site where the existing, or the south of the buildable area of the site where the existing building is, with the surface parking lot fronting Rossmore Parkway and Rossmore Parkway Court to the north. And here's where you can see how that circulation is being modified on site. So there's a driveway entrance off Rossmore Parkway, and then 2 access points off Rossmore Parkway Court instead of those series of curb cuts which exist today. And what that allows them to do is to provide 12 parking stalls along the curb of Rossmore Parkway Court. And there'll be 55 additional parking stalls on the property itself. So combined, though, that is a total of 67 parking spaces, which meets the code requirements for parking for this site. Staff is looking for some additional information from the applicant just to confirm that those parking stalls proposed in the easement area are in fact for the exclusive use of this project. So assuming that staff receives that information, then the project is meeting the parking requirements. You'll also see with the building footprint, there are 2 courtyard, the units are surrounding kind of 2 courtyard amenity spaces at the center of each building. And I'll go through some floor plans as well. This is the basement area, which has some amenity spaces as well as some supporting spaces. And that is just located at the southern end of the building. Proposed first floor plan, which again includes some amenity spaces, the courtyard areas as well as the units. And then the main lobby entrance I'll point out here is, I don't know if you can see my cursor hopefully, but it's at the north kind of western corner, I would say, of the building, which is directly across from the primary vehicle entrance off Rossmore Parkway Court. And here's the second level plan, which is essentially, again, amenity spaces and units. And a roof plan. Staff is still kind of working with the applicant on, locations of some of the mechanical equipment, but in general, this is the proposed roof plan. There are some areas highlighted here in red, which are areas that are kind of exceeding the height limit. I'll get into that a little bit more detail in a second, but I want to highlight just so you're aware of those areas in the roof plan. And some proposed elevations. So the applicant is using a kind of white, medium gray, and darker gray color palette with some stone veneer. The siding proposed as a mix of horizontal siding as well as board and batten, with the stone veneer running along the base. And there also are some wood trellis elements proposed at various locations at both the ground and second story at some windows, as well as a mix of standing seam metal roof and composition shingle roof. And here are some sections kind of showing the height that I was alluding to earlier. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the site has a unique topography to it. It also has a unique kind of situation because it is in a planned development zone. The city has Measure A, which sets the height limit for all sites within the city. And in planned development zones, Measure A states that the building height, the maximum building height is whatever the maximum height is of a building on site in a planned development. So what we need to look at in this situation, what staff is analyzing, is what the existing building height was of the former building, and that sets the height limit for any future development on the site. And so the applicant has been looking into this and has been getting information, and they have conducted a survey, and the existing building is 30 feet 6 inches, 30.5 feet tall. And so that is their maximum height limit for this project. And so a couple areas that staff is working with the applicant on is how we measure height. Because there are some grade differences, we measure from the baseline is either the existing or proposed base elevation, whichever is lower. And so in some situations, the proposed is lower than the base elevation. So we're just making sure that we are measuring height correctly in all areas. But I want to highlight this here for your review because it is something that we will ensure that the building meets the height limit, and we are working with the applicant on it. And there are a few areas where there might be some architectural elements that are projecting above the height limit. And the code allows DRC to approve minor architectural elements to project beyond the height limit if they're not, you know, a prominent part of the building, and if DRC feels that they add variation to the skyline. And so here's a proposed landscape plan, conceptual in nature, but it does show that, you know, a series of trees planted along the entire frontage, which staff feels will help kind of buffer the parking from the street, as well as, you know, trees and various shrubs lining the building facade, as well as in the courtyard areas. And I'll point out there's actually a view terrace area at the rear, kind of southern end of the building, taking advantage of that sloping topography at the back. Staff is also looking for, you know, preliminary irrigation plans, planting plans that will be provided to the Design Review Commission once it's a little bit more fully developed for a final design review. So just to point out some of staff's comments and some feedback that we're looking specifically from the DRC on. This, per the existing plan development zoning, there were no setbacks, FAR, kind of development standards set. And so those standards are actually up to Design Review Commission to set through the approved site plan. Staff had some initial concerns with the paved parking lining the street, but recognizes that the site has some unique topography and that the applicant is providing some landscaping to help buffer that, but we are seeking DRC's feedback on that aspect of the site plan. And then just, I've included a list of additional information that staff has already requested from the applicant, just so that, you know, the commission knows that this information will be coming at a later date. But again, this is a preliminary kind of study session. So finer architectural details, that easement language to confirm parking compliance, the height measurement compliance, planting and irrigation plans, just to confirm any potential tree removals on site, final fence and wall details, and any signage. So all that information will be presented to the Design Review Commission at a subsequent hearing. So tonight, staff is recommending that the DRC review the proposed project and provide preliminary comments to both staff and the applicant on the site plan, building design, landscaping, and color material palette. I am here if you have any questions, and the applicant team also is here tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Haley. Any questions of the commissioners to staff? Commissioner Killian.
Haley, could you kind of explain a little bit more on the Rossmore Parkway Court, that easement? Does that need to stay a street, or does the applicant have any options on how they develop that half of the street?
So we have requested the easement agreement language from the applicant. So I have not seen, you know, that language yet, but that easement is on, you know, this property, and it does provide access to the properties at the end of the court. So, you know, at a bare minimum, there would definitely be a requirement to maintain that access way. But beyond that, maybe the applicant also has some additional information to provide, but staff has not yet seen any of that language.
So, and does it have to be that section would be, I guess, going into the project, and the street to the north is coming out, or can the street to the north be two-way? Is there room for that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So like the half to the north on the other side of the median?
Correct.
Well, there is, you know, right now with the parking situation, there's 20 feet travel lane, which I think we have maybe engineering on board that can step in if I'm misspeaking, but that I believe would be slightly less than what would be permitted for a two-way street. However, the entire width is 31 feet. So if there was a situation where there was no parking, potentially, but I would again have to look at kind of the language, and obviously it would impact then the portion to the north as well.
Okay. And then let's jump down to the south, that the creek bank or whatever. Is that kind of off limits open space, or is there an opportunity for some walking paths or any type of amenities in that area, or is that precluded?
To my knowledge, so it's not set aside as like an undevelopable portion of the property necessarily. There are kind of various setback requirements for structures and such. But to my knowledge, there wouldn't be anything I'm aware of that would maybe prevent some sort of amenity aspect to that area. And it's definitely something we can look into further.
All right, thank you.
Joseph?
Couple of questions, Haley. The two adjacent parcels are similar in FAR. They're being used for the same use.
So the parcel directly to the east is the skilled nursing facility. That FAR, which I will say is, I could only find their gross site calculations, so it might be slightly higher than this if their net is lower, but is actually less. It's 0.32. Atria Valley, which is the RCFE located all the way at the end of the court, just outside of this view in this image here, that is more similar in use, and that FAR is 0.5.
Okay, that's close. Okay. So this building that's there now isn't being used, correct?
Correct. It's vacant.
It is vacant. Okay. I'm going to have to ask it. We have the two letters from the neighbors, and I was there today in the middle of the afternoon, and there were over 50 cars parked on this site. So the neighbors' concerns about what's going to happen if and when this goes in seem like they are justified. Everybody's going to be wind up parking out on Rossmore Parkway or in the shopping center across the street. Are we in a situation, that, again, I don't know, I don't think it'll affect this project because the rules are the rules, where we're under parking these projects?
So the way that the parking works for residential care facilities is it's 0.25 spaces per bed, and then an additional parking stall for an employee. And I did do some digging into how we've processed these in the past, especially in response to the correspondence we've received. And we, as a practice, and I've found probably 5 other residential care facilities, we use the proposed kind of largest peak shift of employees as to calculate their parking requirement. And we've done that at the Atria Valley View, Tiffany Court, and Byron Park. And the Oakmont project, which is currently under review, is also utilizing that. So in practice, they are meeting their parking requirement, assuming we don't have any issues with the easement, aside, but they are meeting their parking requirement. That's not to ignore, what's currently happening, on site, and what might be happening, with how this site, now that it's vacant, is being used by the other adjacent uses. But what this project is kind of responsible for and what they're proposing, they are showing that they're meeting our code's parking standards.
Okay, but there will be an impact. I mean, the city must be aware there's going to be an impact on the surrounding neighborhood.
Right, and actually, what we have required in the past and what staff will likely also require for this project is a kind of parking demand study that looks at a little bit more in detail of what the actual demand is, that goes into more detail than maybe what our just black and white code requirements are.
And I'm assuming there'll be some signage about parking at some point as part of this also, so that everybody from next door aren't just parking here again?
Yeah, so there's, both kind of circulation signage to help folks navigate the area, especially given the kind of uniqueness of Rossmore Parkway Court being this kind of one-way circle. But I also imagine the applicant will also want to include signage to enforce that on their own. So we could also ask them that question. But yes, I believe that circulation, wayfinding, and parking signage will be a part of the package.
Last question. There are 3 handicap parking spaces on the site. I realize that handicap parking is normally done as a percentage of the parking you provide. it seems very low. Is there any additional requirements for additional handicap parking on a project that is senior housing like this?
Not that I'm aware of, and we do route these plans to our building division, who kind of does a quick code, check. Obviously, this will eventually require a building permit. But it's definitely something, I understand your point, and it's definitely something that I can confirm with them that they are meeting the parking requirements for handicap.
Thank you. Those are my only questions.
I have a question, Haley. Is the only connection between the courtyards through that bistro?
Yes, through this kind of center lobby bistro area. That is the kind of the primary entrance to the courtyard. It looks like there might be some kind of secondary, I'm seeing if I can find my cursor. It's not finding me, but there seems, here we go, some secondary potential entrance through here. But again, I think we're waiting for a little bit more developed floor plans to show that. And maybe the applicant can address that tonight as well. But this open lobby area is the main entrance.
And I think I'm reading that the separations on the narrower court, separation between buildings is 35 feet. Is that correct? I think I can see that. And 53 in the wider one, right?
Yes. Yep, I can double check on the plans. Yes, 35 and 53, correct.
Thank you.
Haley, Charles, you had a comment on one of the slides about the concern about the street level parking. I just want to understand if that concern is solely on the 12 parallel spots on Parkway Court, or just the level parking in front of the building in general. Where is your concern?
More for the parking, the 55 kind of parking stalls and circulation aisles lining the primary frontage of the site. We have some kind of general design guidelines that, speak towards, having more like architectural features on the street, activating, the project frontages, and rows of parking tends to not activate the frontages, although, like I mentioned, staff also recognizes the uniqueness of the site and the landscape buffers that the applicant is providing. And Rossmore Parkway is the true kind of public street frontage, and that's relatively small compared to Rossmore Parkway Court, which is a private, really an access easement, which is their longer frontage. So we're, have those initial concerns that we voiced to the applicant, and are also just seeing if DRC has comments on that as well.
Yeah, I tend to agree with staff on this one. Chair Case, is there a certain cadence we're doing for our comments? Is there going to be a applicant presentation, et cetera, and we have our comments later like normal?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll reserve my comments for then. Thank you.
Great. Okay, I don't have any questions. So are there any others before we move to the applicant presentation?
I got one more.
Okay.
Are all the elevator towers above the height limit? Or is that just that one that we saw in the section?
Let me go to our section. So there is the one shown up at the top, section C. And I'll clarify that elevator towers, stair towers, things of that nature are allowed to exceed the height limit, I believe by 12 feet above the adjacent roof line. So those, even though they are showing it exceeding the building height limit, those actually are allowed to per code.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Thank you, Haley.
Thank you. So is there a presentation from the applicant?
Yes, there is. Thank you. This is Dave Mitani. I'm with Shelter Architects. And commissioners, thank you for having us tonight. I'm going to share my screen. It says host disabled participants screen sharing.
Just 1 minute, we'll get that fixed. Is it working now?
Yes. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. We're getting a little background noise from someone. Okay, well, I guess we'll keep going. Let me start this. And starting off will be Marco Vicchili with Alliance Residential, the owner.
Great. Good evening, commissioners. Thanks for your time tonight in reviewing this project with us. We're looking forward to getting your feedback. My name's Marco Vicchili. I'm the managing director of Alliance Residential and the Northern California division. Next slide. Just a very brief intro on Alliance. We're headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. We've got 23 offices across the country, working in 20 states. And our current pipeline of development efforts is just over 14,000 units. Next slide. So of those 14,000 units, we have 15 communities or 2,600 units that are specifically in the senior housing sector. The remaining part is in multifamily. And here's a list of our senior living communities. We're most heavily concentrated on the West Coast. We've got a project open in San Jose, another one in Roseville, and a third one up in Tukwila that are all open and operating. And the remainder of the projects are moving through the development process. Next slide. Just a couple quick pictures of the type of building that we build. This is our project in San Jose. You can see our monument sign in the bottom left-hand corner. That's our bistro. We really try to have the finishes and call it the ceiling plan in the bottom right corner represent what may feel and look like a boutique hotel in sort of the new style as senior living continues to innovate. Next slide. We'll go through these pretty quickly. This is another project we have in San Jose. It's a taller building, assisted living and memory care. Next slide. And an independent living building we have in Santa Clara. Next slide. And this is our building up in Roseville that just opened that is independent living also. Next slide. So this will hand over to Dave and he'll take the presentation from here. I guess from my vantage point, we're looking forward to collaborating with you and working with the city and the community. We take a lot of pride in senior living communities and developing ones that are current. There's a lot of innovation that's going on in senior living right now, and we would be excited to talk with you about some of those things that have been changing over the past few years. We think it's really great for our seniors and we're passionate about what we do. I think this will be our 5th project with Shelter. So Dave Matani and Alliance go back a long ways. We've worked together. So we're hopeful for a smooth execution and again, collaborating with you all. Dave?
Thanks, Marco. So Haley did a pretty good job of context. This is just kind of an overall area. I wanted to walk you through a little more detail and then hopefully answer some of the questions that the commissioners brought up. So again, we're at the corner of Rossmore Parkway and Rossmore Parkway Court, and I'll get into a little more detail about how Rossmore Parkway Court is working. a little bit of context photos. We kind of have the aerial or upper right-hand side that shows the one-story building that's vacant right now. More importantly, item or number 2 in the middle, it kind of shows that street frontage. There is a median that everybody should be aware of down that court. There's a big line of, I think, London plane trees that our landscape architect will talk about, and hopefully trying to preserve some of that. And then some of the senior buildings that are on that cul-de-sac directly across the street, across from the median, there's Manor Care. It's a 2-story building on that side. Right next to us is the skilled nursing facility, which is 1-story. And then down at the end of the cul-de-sac is Atria. And again, it's a 1-story building. So there's 2 things with this, main things, the building placement and then the parking circulation. So as was explained, we have one entry over off of Rossmore Parkway. Public Works, I believe that even in your packet, has suggested that we move this driveway down to the end here, so there's no conflict with the crosswalk. We don't have a problem with that. We have 2 entries along Parkway Court. We kind of block this off, but there is this median along this side, and we are planning to come in directly off of the corner into our main entry, or there's another entry and exit over on the side, primarily for loading, so that we have a loading lane along the right-hand side or on the eastern side that can service the kitchen that is in the rear. So we did look at placement of the building, and one thing that we started with was kind of the height limitation, which we at the 30.5 feet. And what we did is we looked at different locations for this building. In order for us to make this work with our 2-story building, we really need to, the main part of the building, drop the elevation in some of the areas here. And so if we did that, and we placed the building along the street edge, because the street really isn't changing in elevation, it would be very difficult for us to place a building there, which would basically probably have to do a lot of retaining along those streets and then really sink the building down. So what we thought would be that would work a little bit better was to use this parking in the front, very simple parking layout, in order to use that area to make up the grade as we sink the building further toward the rear. We also wanted to kind of pull our building to the edge here. This is really pretty nice, and probably our best views are down the slope, down the creek, across. So the brown areas here are really the common areas, and our main dining and activity rooms are along that backside. So we wanted to get those views along the back. There was the question about usability of what would happen down here. You know, there's kind of a flat area down on this creek, but this is really a pretty steep area. So as far as usability for our residents, I think it would be really tough, you know, with the average age of these residents being 85 years and older, to be able to navigate our residents down and make this a little bit more usable as far as walking paths. So what we're trying to do is incorporate these courtyards for kind of the outdoor amenities, amenity space. We talked about the number of units. We're abiding by the parking count, 30 max on the employees or at the peak time that Haley talked about. And I will go to the next slide. A little bit closer up on the ground level. The idea here was to provide our main entry at the corner. We have 2 types of uses, even though this is all assisted living. We do have a memory care, which is kind of the peach color, and we have a dedicated courtyard here. I think one of the commissioners talked about what is really the connection between the 2 courtyards. They're really, from a functional standpoint, we really kind of want to try to keep the connections as separate as possible, not mixing the memory care residents with the assisted living residents is kind of what we were looking for. And so there really is no connection here. other than for staff to be able to possibly come in through the bistro area and back around this side, or you can come in through the corridors here and you could connect that way as well. So we have our neighborhood for memory care here. We have our assisted living on the other courtyard. And then, like I said, the brown area is really the amenity space. So for a guest or a family member to enter here, there's really kind of a little bit of a gallery that comes down here, comes to the back, and then we have a walkway that goes all the way around the project. I wanted to mention that we did review kind of the access layout for fire with Contra Costa Fire, and we're feeling pretty good that they're really they're fine with the acceptance of really keeping their main access road for their trucks along the front, and then to be able to have a walkable path along the back. And that's what these little purple guys are here. We're adding standpipes that they're requesting to have not only in the corridors or in the courtyards, but also along the backside as well. Haley talked a little bit about, we have a little bit of a basement area that is really mostly all underground. That's staff area, that's theater, communal area for some of the AL residents to be able to come down an elevator into that area, a beauty salon, and then some back of the house uses as well. Second floor pretty much stacks on top. We have all our memory care along the bottom side, but the assisted living sits on top of that, and you can see everything looks outward or into the courtyards. So a little bit about the height, and as Haley explained, it's a little complicated. In the staff report, she did talk about what we submitted here, and what we originally submitted is we had the red line in these sections, which is the existing grade. And then we basically came up 30.5 feet height limit and put a red line along the top to show what our height limit is following that. We didn't submit it, but we'll come back in the next round. And what we did was we did a little bit of revision based on Haley's comments. And the comment was that we need to set our base elevation. And so our base elevation could be one of two things. It could be the red line of the existing topography, or it could be the finished grade, like in this case, where if the topography is at the red line, we're dropping 4 or 5 feet, and that would be our base elevation. So when you calculate that and you end up putting that height, the red line height above at 30.5 feet, it pretty much is pretty close to what it was originally. And that's depicted not only in the sections, but this roof plan shows that there are 3 areas, mainly the main entry area at the gable. There's the pertinence or the elevator tower, which I believe is allowed. And then there's one bay facing Rossmore Parkway on the top of the gable roof. And so when we look at a revision of that based on the new base elevations, it's still the two main areas of the entry and of that one bay or gable that's facing to the west. And they grew a little bit in area on that, but we feel that those are two pretty important elements in our design that hopefully is fine with exceeding that height elevation. So elevation wise, kind of some of the imagery that's in your packet that we picked from is really kind of a modern farmhouse. A lot of this is from wine country up north. The idea of having very clean gables, the elements being high gable roofs, some asphalt shingles, introduction of some metal roofs, the idea of some vertical board and bat, and then we wanted to play that against some horizontal lap siding as well. And so that's really translated into our very conceptual elevations at this point. And what we wanted to show was the 2 street elevations. This would be Rossmore Parkway. And these are the 3 bays that we were talking about. We are kind of striking this line through the height limit to show you this one little area here over the gable on the bay, and then the front area that is over the prescribed height limit as well. And then the other elevation, which is the north elevation, to change that look up a little bit and ground those bays or ground those gable elements and introducing some stone, not only along horizontally, but bringing those up vertically as well. Color palette, very earth tone, bringing in some taupe, some white, some darker brown, and then something that in the stone veneer that complements that as well. This is the revised, which we'll submit in the next round. The only difference here is really to show a little bit more area on the main entry that exceeds the height, and then pretty much the same with this bay element and the entry as well. A very quick just perspective sketch. We'll be able to give you a little more enhanced views in the next submittal with different viewpoints, but this is pretty much from the corner of the two streets. So now I wanted Morgan Burke with the Gazzardo Partnership to talk a little bit about the landscape concept plan.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. So I'm Morgan Burke with the Gazzardo Partnership. The landscape design begins with both the Rossmore Parkway and the Rossmore Parkway court frontages. We'll be adding new trees and new shrub planting there to kind of screen back the parking from those frontages. As Dave alluded to, we're also going to take a look at retaining some of the existing trees or some of the existing sizable plane trees that are there. So we want to try to keep them as much as possible, and we'll see if it works with the building footprint. And after we study the health of those trees as well, see if we can incorporate them. The entry off of Rossmore Parkway Court has vehicular accent paving that brings you into the project's front door, gives it a sense of arrival. The perimeter of the building, again, is going to be fully landscaped with trees and shrub plantings, and then there'll be sidewalk connections throughout on the outside of the building. Inside of the building, there are three courtyard areas. One, which is the memory care garden, and that's on the lower left-hand side. That's going to have meandering paths with clear sight lines, open lawn areas, community garden plots, and the planting in there. We're going to try to create a sensory garden that evokes touch, smell, taste with the community garden plots. It's more of a quiet, contemplative space. There'll be bench seating there as well, kind of a park-like atmosphere. The assisted living courtyard, which is in the middle of the plan, that's the more heavily activated courtyard. It's more traditional kind of activation for community. We've got bocce ball courts in there, outdoor cooking counters with barbecue grills, large-scale outdoor fireplaces, those kinds of amenities for those residents. And then to the plan south here, we have that small triangular area, which is a little bit of a view terrace. We're trying to capitalize on those views down into the valley, so there'll be another small seating area there as well. Next slide. So this slide shows the planting character that we're going to try to evoke through the design, as Dave mentioned through his precedent images. We're looking for that wine country farmhouse vibe. So that's kind of what the pictures on the top are trying to evoke. We've got some pictures of some select trees that we're thinking about using. And then at the bottom of the sheet, the sensory garden planting, the character, and then some of the pictures of those individual shrubs. And then on the right side of the sheet, we've got the plant palette. It's a jumping off point right now. It's a very large palette. We're going to, as the project develops, we'll whittle away at this. But plants we're trying to look for are drought tolerant, the native species as much as possible, native and adapted species, and things that will give color and character and texture throughout the project. So that concludes our presentation. I can give it back to Dave and Marco. Again, we appreciate your time. So we're here to answer any questions, and then we look forward to hearing your comments.
Great, thank you. Any questions of the applicant from our commissioners? Commissioner Gorney. You're still muted.
Mutes automatically. I don't like that. Let's see. Where should I start? I didn't see any attention on the stormwater control. Have you guys looked at it preliminarily at all, just to kind of get a ballpark of how much area you're going to need out of your landscape areas to be able to make that work? It seems tight.
Yes, Commissioner. We put some of our preliminary landscape plans or civil plans along the back. They were, our civil engineer was really working with these areas. They felt that that would really work. From the right-hand side, everything slopes down to the bottom. Here, we're providing most of our big areas down here. But they felt doing their calculations that they would be able to make this work.
And you can integrate that into your landscape, because obviously you have landscape areas that compete with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Did you ever consider a covered entry or some kind of a canopy that comes out on a rainy day for people to be able to get in? Or is it just not something really necessary? I'm just asking.
It's a good question. Marco and I were talking a lot about that, and I believe even in our original plan, because this drop-off works in a way that you can drive under and bring a canopy along the top here, we actually had that. We're feeling that a lot of these canopies in the older projects are a little overdone, where we can really make this work, as opposed to a very pronounced piece coming out here. You're still allowed to be able to come, drop off, get under cover right away. And so that's something we can study both ways, Commissioner. But our first choice was not to have our big element so prominent, I guess.
Yeah, some of them are overdone. That's why I was asking. Some of them work really well, some don't.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
You have those pop-out gables on the, what is that, the northwest or southwest side, and they're cantilevered on the second floor, but they don't go all the way to the ground.
Yeah, let me pull that up. So you're talking this area right here, right?
So those are cantilevered out.
Correct. They're coming out about 18 inches or so. I mean, one of the ideas was to kind of design to the use, and the way that this wing works along the street here, the bottom is memory care, but the use changes to assisted living along the top. So we're kind of trying to put these elements along the assisted living area, and then we wanted to ground them because top floor and bottom floor are assisted living on this side, just to kind of provide a little more articulation, so it isn't the same on both sides, to give two different street frontages.
Are the windows pushed all the way out in the 18 inches, or are they set back?
The windows here, they're actually pulled back. No, they're actually pulled. When I mean back, I mean forward.
Forward, okay. And what's the wood panel underneath them?
What we're doing on that is, so material palette, we have the horizontal, the white horizontal here, we have the vertical board and bat, and then we're introducing horizontal, but changing the color to this accent color.
So it's a board and bat still?
No, I'm sorry, it's a horizontal.
Oh, it's a horizontal. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, we'll be looking at all those details when it comes back. I mean, you may want to look at the way the pop-outs are detailed on the bottom, whether some sort of corbel or base or something, because they seem like they're sort of hanging in space right now.
Yeah, to show that they're a little supported. Sure.
Yeah, you'll work on them. Just it's comments.
Okay.
The windows are going to be dark bronze vinyl.
The windows will, for the residential pieces, the windows will be vinyl, and they'll be a darker brown on the outside and white on the inside. But then when we come to kind of the common areas, those will probably be storefront, but those will also be in a bronze. We get them pretty close in color.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's going to be critical because the colors you're showing has to work. The bronze is kind of browny. Sometimes it'll look blacker here, so I'm sure you
Right.
can work the colors into the window because that's the hardest one to change.
No, that's a good comment. We've worked really hard at trying to get those colors as close as possible.
Yeah, yeah, we're looking at a screen on something that's a print. So, okay, you got the panel. The top is there's a stone base going around with a big fat black top on it. What is that cap? Is it a stone or is it wood or is it?
You know, at this stage, at a very concept level, undetermined. We're going to have to cap that with something. I mean, it could be, when this, the stone will probably be artificial stone, right? Something like an El Dorado. We're not really too happy with El Dorado's caps on these. So we can come in with either a precast or probably a precast. I mean, the wood would probably deteriorate, wouldn't be a good idea to do that. So probably some sort of precast on that top.
Okay. And again, these are questions of, really questions / comments of things that we'll be looking for when it comes back again.
Right.
And obviously you're working on proportions of things like the height of the stone. You have that main entrance with the stone that's like taller than me, and then it's got light fixtures up above it. So I'm sure you're going to continue to study those proportions of the stone and the wood and the light fixtures and things.
Yes.
It's a pretty big elevation, but I do like it. I think it works out very nicely. And that's got metal. All the slope parts that are popped out have metal roof, and then the rest of them all have asphalt comp.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to keep the metal roof on kind of this little porch element and possibly metal roof on the main element.
Okay, and the certain things like the entrance, you have little teeny light fixtures up there. It's one of those things where you could really add some pop to it. So, some of those little main fixtures like that we'll be looking for when it comes back.
Or, we might toy with some sort of pendant or something that hangs from the top as well.
And I'm assuming you're going to have an art component of this. Do you think it's going to be out on the street or on the building or on the stair towers or inside the courtyard?
Usually we kind of like to integrate it into the building in some way. So undetermined at this point, but that's something we'll come back with you.
I think you're like the elevator tower. I like the stone on it, but it may need some more detail. It's sort of a lot of stone. So have an opportunity to use maybe that on the front of the building for something, but I think they're a little plain right now. I'm a little concerned about the backside design on the southwest because I don't think you have any of those little pediments on there. And so I'm concerned that it's just going to be a big flat wall with windows in it. How are you thought about how you're going to articulate it yet, or is it still being developed?
Commissioner, are you talking about kind of over on here on this side?
Yes.
Have not looked at that as well. What we do have going for us on this is they're not really stacking. So we have smaller units along the bottom, and then let's see, as we go to the second floor, you can see the widths change. So I think there's a way. We honestly haven't looked at that side yet, but we understand your point of not just wanting a flat face along toward the neighbors.
And I'm assuming the windows on the elevations are like sliders over fixed or fixed over sliders?
Either fixed, either sliders or possibly single hung, one or the other.
Oh, really? Okay, but that'll change proportions, so you'll develop it. Okay.
It will, absolutely.
Last question, I think, is outdoor seating at the dining room. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of it. You have like 2 tables out there. It seems like these days everybody wants a lot of that. You have a space to the left, the activity area. Do you think people would just kind of go over there with a tray and take their food over there and sit outside?
Are you talking inside or are you talking outside?
Outside seating.
Oh, outside. Yes. So Morgan kind of laid out some outside area here. From our dining over in this area. I mean, there is the possibility we start enhancing this area as a terrace. Honestly, a lot of times when we do outside eating, the seniors in this population, it's really hard for them to get out. We like giving the opportunity to do that. But the most important thing would be to have ample shade for them.
Well, as I was going to say, on top of that, it needs some kind of shade. Although you do have a lot of trees there, and I see why you're facing in that direction, so that makes sense.
Okay.
Those are my questions. Thank you very. Oh, the bistro is just for like if like I'm visiting somebody there and I grab a coffee with them and not using the main dining room, sort of off hours and things. My mother lives in a similar place. That's why I'm asking.
Right. It's kind of a social hub, a gathering area that might have some grab and go type of lunch items, but really not a main dining area.
And there'll be some sort of seating out there somewhere, you know, obviously in the.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we do like about this is you come into the lobby, you kind of see this element, but then you can bleed out into the landscape as well. So we really need to look at this whole piece here. How it
Okay.
works together.
I think it's coming along very well. So thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Brian.
All right, I'm going to kind of split my questions up into the first section is going to be kind of site planning, a couple architectures, and then after that, get into the landscape. Starting with this circulation, well, let's start with the Rossmore Parkway Court. When I first looked at it, it just seemed very efficient, a lot of asphalt there. And so my question was, you know, first of all, putting the parallel parking on the outside seemed like it's going to complicate that drive-through. So is there a way to flip that where you put the island a little bit closer to the north and you somehow reconfigure that parking inside so all your parking is visually within your property and not along that aisleway?
Commissioner, are you talking about this island?
Correct. And I'm talking about the 12 parallel parking that would be to the north of that.
So one thing that's unusual about this property is our property line extends into the street up to the median, right? So there's like, I think a 5-foot median here. So it's one side of the median, the southern side of the median. Presently, if you've been out there, people are parking along that median, which may not be legal, may be legal, I'm not sure. We thought by two things, by eliminating all these curb cuts into kind of a semi-public street and bringing all of our parking on the correct side of the road, which people are used to drive along, park on in a parallel way, and then make the turn at the U-turn over at the cul-de-sac, would really kind of clean up that whole area and make it a lot safer. But your suggestion is to move this which way?
North, and take your 12 parallel and somehow incorporate them within your parking area and not have them outside.
Yeah, that would say we moved that green area all the way up into this area. I'm not sure how you would access those parallel spaces then.
Well, they would go away. That's what I'm saying. You'd somehow reconfigure your parking lot now with the added space on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. What we're trying to balance is if we move these, 12 or 13 cars inboard here, we start taking up more landscaping area, which we really do need for what Commissioner Gorney talked about as far as infiltration. So we're trying to balance the two to make that work.
Okay. Let's go to the two entryways off of Rossmore Parkway. If I'm understanding the blue arrows, are they both, when you're exiting out, you can only make a right turn?
So in this area, so if somebody's coming along Rossmore Parkway this way, or they're turning in through here, they would come in obviously on the right side. So it's a right in. And then if you're exiting, it would be a right out. Now, if you did the right out, you would have to go all the way down to the cul-de-sac and come out. Same thing on this area, you would be a right in and a right out only because of the median that's presently there.
Okay, now starting with the one that's to the west, I guess, the first entry, I don't see a median there. So why can you not make a left turn to go out to Tice Valley, which would be kind of
Well, I think it's not really shown here, but I think that median comes all the way over into this area here. And I think for safety, you probably would want, you need to be on this side of the road in order to go left.
No, I'm talking about go to the first driveway cut off of Rossmore Parkway,
Oh, right here.
right there.
Mhm.
Why can you not make a left out of there?
I think that would be something up to, up to Public Works on whether they would allow that or not for safety. Yeah, I mean, it conceivably could be done. I'm not sure how the shopping center across the street works because it's probably the same issue, right? Because there's a driveway right here. And if they're able to hang a left out here, what you're saying is, why wouldn't you be able to turn right here? I just don't know the answer to that as far as safety goes, but it's a possibility.
Okay. The next is around the entryway. It seems awful small, and these are my anecdotal observations from my mom living in a place like this. But first of all, is there going to be some sort of a bus, a transportation for the residents to take them to shopping centers and downtown and church and so forth?
Yeah, Marco, you want to answer that for operations?
Yeah, happy to. So we will have a bus that will be called a 15 to 20 passenger vehicle that will, exactly as you described, take them to those sorts of activities. We'll also have a private car that will bring one person if they need to go to a doctor's appointment or something they want more personal like that.
Okay, so the bus to load up the people is generally going to be coming off the front door?
Correct. It'll pull right up into that drop-off area, and then the residents will walk out the front lobby and load onto the bus.
Right. So my experience just from my observation, that bus on other things is usually parked out there or is waiting for a long time. So again, it's from your layout there, it seems like it'd be kind of plugging up the entry. And then all the outside people that are visiting the residents or to take them out for coffee or whatever, generally want to pull up to the front door as close as possible, to get their relatives into the car. And again, I just don't see the queuing here other than one or two cars that's going to make that a workable or an easy solution. So, I mean, were there other options to where this front was opened up a little bit to allow, 4 or 5 cars and the bus there to make it work?
We can certainly look at that. I mean, there's opportunity. What we've done in the past on other projects is we've, in the drop-off area, if somebody wants to wait there and they're waiting for, their mom to come out, then they can park in a certain area right in the drop-off and be able to get out without, clogging this. I think you're concerned about just clogging that whole area up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then just as you said, I didn't see any waiting areas again, that if you're going to pick up your parents there, if they're waiting outside for you instead of in the lobby so they can see you come. I didn't see any opportunities, benches and a seating area outside.
That's a good point. Generally, we'll provide, once we start articulating this a little bit more, we have a little bit of a porch element right here on our elevations. We can get some seating along there. We usually like to try to get some seating on the outside as well as the inside for incremental.
Okay.
Exactly.
So again, all my questions, my concern is I think it's too tight. I think that needs to be, the entry needs to be expanded a little bit. Then let's go to the south of the project. First of all, I didn't understand what that white, right where your cursor is, that white space. What does that represent?
I believe that is the existing building underneath.
Just the traffic.
Yeah, see the blue line here? This blue line is the existing building, and it has a little bit of a nose that peeks out. And then it has a walkway along that bottom.
Okay. I wanted to kind of tag on to what Joseph indicated about the outdoor seating. Again, I thought it was very minimal, and I understand your comment about the seniors maybe not wanting to be outside. I think they do like to go outside just to sit and look. And again, I was wondering if you looked at or the opportunity to, increase that, whether it needs to be a deck because of elevation change, or you can make that a larger patio, not necessarily for eating but they could just go out with groups if they wanted to play cards or whatever, and be able to see some of the natural landscape to the south.
No, I think there's an opportunity there. We also, I didn't point out, when you go up to the top floor, we have another small common area here, gathering space, and then we did introduce a deck above there on the second floor for another outdoor space as well.
Okay.
And if I may jump in and offer, we are considering Nanowalls, if you're familiar with those, that are the sliding glass walls that can take that dining room and really open it up. And you know, if you've seen them, you're sitting inside, but you feel like you're outside. And that's really important for us and our residents to have them have it feel like that. So they may not want to go 100% outside, but when you open up the Nanowall, it feels like it is.
Okay. Then I had just two questions, I guess, on the architecture. Kind of question, the entry again. It seems out of scale to me. And again, were there any options we could look at? That elevator tower, I agree with Joseph, just going up all stone seems massive, and there's no articulation to it. And then the actual entry, it appears that the stone is maybe 6 feet high or taller. And just the visual weight of that, you know, for you know, some 85-year-olds seems kind of overwhelming. And so again, my question is, you know, this is a study session. Are there any other options we can look at, or any other elevations that you're playing around with for that entry?
Not today, but we certainly can study that, you know, under advisement. So is your, I understand the heaviness of the stone that both of you talked about. As far as when you talk about scale, are you feeling the gable itself is?
Well, the proportion of the stone, you know, it right there, it looks like it's, you know, if that's a figure at 6 feet, it looks like the stone may be going up 8 feet, and
Right.
just the width of the columns and everything, it just seems very massive,
Sure.
you know, for the entry, and just seems, you know, for some of the elderly, it just might seem a little bit overwhelming, a massive structure rather than a welcoming front door to their home.
Sure. No, we certainly can take a look at that, and then when we come back, we can have an alternative on that.
Okay, let me jump over to landscaping now. That's good. Okay, I would hope when you come back again, I mean, this is just a pretty picture. You know, there's no identification to trees, and you just have a squiggly line for all your landscaping. So it really doesn't tell us anything how you're landscaping it. So, but one thing you had mentioned on the, I think your opening letter or on your front page, you indicated the landscaping was going to be very unique and special at the entryway. And again, looking at this, can you describe what's so special about it and what you're going to do to really welcome people?
Well, I guess it's something we're gonna look at. Obviously, this is a pretty picture. We need to develop it further, and so I agree with you there. In terms of dressing up the landscaping in the front right now, I think we're going to take a look. I think the team is going to take another look at the entry sequence per your comments. I think there needs to be a lot more happening right there in terms of seating and providing that sense of welcoming to the project. But right now, we only have the median that's right there at the drop off, so that can be filled with, that's just a planted median right now. So I think we need to kind of circle the wagons on that one and kind of take another look at it.
Well, what's
to
happening
make
there?
that
I mean,
a stronger entrance.
Can you give us some idea of what you anticipate? I mean, is there a water feature? Are you going to do some special? I mean, what's happening there? It's just.
I don't think it's a water feature. I don't think we need to do anything. I think the building is speaking for itself there at the entry. I think there's going to be the vehicular accent paving there is going to add to it, and then I think there's going to be, again, there's that little brown area underneath the entry there. We're going to have accent paving in that area as well. I think we'll beef up the seating so that it's going to feel like more of an entry, more of a arrival. And then we'll look to study the plant material to see that if we put something there with, exciting color and texture there, to kind of bring that together. I don't know if there needs to be a fountain again. Also,
Well,
too, if you're going
I'm
to
not
put that
saying there's a
public art, if
fountain.
you're going to
I'm
put
just trying to
yeah.
understand what
if you're going to put the public art, also per Joseph's comment, the public art on the elevator tower. I mean, that would be something too that could provide, kind of that entry feature as well. So I mean, those are things that we'll take a look at.
All right. What do these circles, what trees do they represent? For example, along the Rossmore Parkway, directly in front of the building, those narrow planters, what are those trees? What are you thinking?
Well, I originally was thinking we would put London plane trees in there, but they're already existing out there. So I think what we want to do right now is study the London plane trees that are out there, see if we can keep them, see if they work within there, because then we could have mature plants on day one. But something of that nature, either a London plane tree, maybe Chinese elm would be another option for that.
Okay, I guess you're talking about the parkway. I was referring to the planter strip right up against the building.
Oh, those trees. I mean, I think that's going to be smaller in nature. That's more of the Cirrus canadensis. That's more western redbud, maybe an arbutus. Something smaller. That's not going to be of size there. Maybe even the prunus too. That might be more appropriate there.
All right, I'm just kind of curious because how it works with the architecture. The architecture represents, larger trees that are getting up to the second floor and so forth. And so I don't know if that's really going to be possible with those smaller planting areas. I want to move into the, well, there was a question about the bioretention. I guess maybe you just haven't coordinated with the civil because your landscaping obviously doesn't relate at all to any of the bioretention areas, especially in the two courtyards. So your whole layout won't work if the bio.
Well, I mean, right now what he's shown is diagrammatic. He's just plunked it down in the middle of the courtyard. I mean, I think we can work and see, that might be able to divide it. Again, that's something we're really going to have to drill down, and we don't know where the rainwater leaders come down into the courtyard. And that's something we're going to have to study, further to see. But I think right now we can try to incorporate it up. It's probably going to be up against the building most likely. So maybe those green areas along the building, those become, planters. Again, that's something we have to study further.
Okay. I want to narrow into those courtyards. Again, I don't see the one around the memory care. Again, the community garden plots. I don't see, an 85-year-old people out there doing the gardening. And even if they are, I question, where do you have the equipment? Where's the shed for the tools? Where are you going to get the soil and all that? So, how does that really work in this type of an environment?
It's a good question. I think up where that, if we had to build an exterior structure for that kind of stuff, I think where there's that little dog leg up to the right where we could put something in there to kind of house it. Right now it's just so that can be an opportunity for storage right there. We're just trying to bring in something like that. These people with memory care issues, like it could be a good opportunity for them to dig and work in the soil.
I'm just wondering if most of them, in my experience, maybe walkers and so forth, and they just want to get out in the fresh air and sit in groups, and be outside. So I'm just wondering if, these type of activities maybe is a little bit, misguided at this point, and whether there's more just little community gatherings where they can get out and just experience the fresh air and be with their friends and just, look at more of a passive of landscape.
Well, it could. I mean, that area you could easily swap that central area out for just a patio space too. That could just be a paved area with tables and chairs as well, in lieu of the community garden.
Right. Okay. Moving on to the other courtyard then. Again, I question the barbecue. Again, I'm just going on my personal experience, but most of the people, barely they want one meal a day. They're just not eating that much, and I and they're really not going out to barbecue. That's probably the last thing they're going to do. You know, they might have a tuna fish sandwich or whatever. So again, I question whether that's appropriate for this type of environment, and whether it's more of a gathering space to where you have the activity director, you know, having him go out there to play their games or whatever they do, as opposed to, you know, something that might be more appropriate in a multifamily use situation or whatever.
Yeah, why don't
good
I jump?
question.
Why don't I jump in
Go
on
ahead.
that one? This is Marco Vakili from really from the operations standpoint. So it is true, residents are not going to go out there and barbecue their hamburger for dinner because of the average age of 84, 85 years old. But what does happen often is the community staff will put on events and they will use that barbecue, and you'll have Cinco de Mayo out there, and they'll be cooking up carne asada, and the families will be over. And so it's those sorts of things. So yeah, the residents aren't barbecuing physically, but they are definitely participating in the events that happen out there. And we are seeing it. We're talking a lot about how assisted living and memory care have evolved a lot in the past 10 years. And this is one of many examples that are that evolution.
Okay, I mean, you're the expert. I just want to, you know, make sure this is thought through so that, you know, the space works. The other observation I have is on the landscaping. Most of these people, you know, get the enjoyment. They stay in more than they go out. So when they go out to their balcony, they appreciate just looking down on these landscapes, you know. And so it's not necessarily the use, but that it's landscape more from a passive, you know, visual indication. And again, you know, to you know, maybe this your whole scheme is shifted a little bit more for you know, the actual people that are going to be living here, as opposed to more of an active community. Let me stop, because I think I'm getting more into comments than questions here. So thank you very much.
Good comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Malia?
Okay, yes, I have questions. I want to piggyback on the courtyards. My concern here is I understood that it's not desirable for them to be connected. I'll take that point. But I see the third space that was mentioned during the landscape presentation, the triangular space. Thank you, that's it, the one you have the cursor on. I see it as an orphan. I see it as an accidental space. Like, the courtyards are there, they're very visible, they're part of the composition, but this one seems to be a leftover space. Is there any way that you can articulate that space with either courtyard, or make it more part of the whole open space system in this building? That would be my first question. The second thing is that when I see, and I guess we didn't have any elevations of the common use areas like the dining room and those. I would love to see those in a later presentation. But my concern is that those buildings that for me are really important, they congregate a lot of people here. They seem to be, the layout of the building seems to be the same as when you lay apartments against apartments. The corridor between the apartments and those buildings remain the same. Doesn't a building like this actually merit a better space in front of it towards the apartment? And doesn't it merit a better space in front of the building itself towards the view? I mean, I guess the two comments made by the previous commissioners point to that there's not enough seating space. My concern is that the open space in front of that building is minimal, and I think, being common buildings, those spaces have to be, I think they have to be better thought, and those buildings, those masses, have to be better integrated with the building and not be treated just like another apartment. What I mean is, when you have the corridors in front of those buildings, they seem as narrow as if you were going across the apartments, but these are going to bring a lot of people. So why don't we make that a little bit more meaningful?
I can take that one. And then Morgan, you can add if you'd like. So First of all, we definitely will have the elevations along this back side, along the left-hand side and the other side as we get into real schematics and submit for the next submittal. I think this area here can be treated as a courtyard that isn't an orphan, because one thing we try to do in these projects is to create a variety of outdoor spaces or outdoor rooms, and one that is enclosed here or one that is enclosed here. To me, I think being able to access this at the joint and come out into this space, into a seated terrace area, this is going to be the great space. I mean, this is going to have the great view. You're going to be within trees. It's going to give you a much more, not, I wouldn't say more, but a different type of experience that we can really enhance that as we get into the landscaping and the seating. I do agree with, this area being kind of a little bit of a leftover. We are required to keep this path along here for fire access, but perhaps there's an opportunity to kind of expand this area and maybe treat it as an outdoor terrace. As Marco was talking about, if we can get kind of a folding wall along here and have an indoor-outdoor experience, and then maybe just beef this area up here. It's not coming out any further than the existing building is there now, but that might be an opportunity. But certainly your comments make sense, and we really need to kind of study this, the backside. Really agree with that.
And again, I mean,
Yeah,
I will insist, sorry, Morgan, I will insist that the corridor between the apartments and those common buildings, which are going to bring a lot of people, if you want to point out, yes, those corridors, they have the same category as the other ones. Shouldn't they be different? I mean, those corridors are facing buildings that are going to bring a lot of people. So shouldn't they have a different meaning and a different vocabulary than the rest of the building?
Well, I think it's all about how that corridor is treated. We don't envision, these walls just being walls with entering into a door. We're going to probably open these up, so that people that come along the left side or the right side are just kind of spilling into activity or into dining areas. So we don't, please, at a very conceptual level, just having a line here, we're envisioning that to be kind of a porous corridor through there. So I think this experience definitely will be different than a double-loaded corridor with units on both sides.
Yeah, that's my concern with the sketch right now, and I'm sure you have given thought to that. It's not something that I see, so that's why I make a comment about it.
No, thank you.
Can I just want to add one thing about the back of the dining area. I think that if we when we work on that, if that becomes like the nano expression that Marco had brought up, what we could do, obviously those trees would be removed that are on the back there, and you could take the special paving, the accent paving that's where the view terrace area is right now, and then bring that all the way across over to the dining terrace, so that whole area would read as one. Just kind of make it a larger expression back there. Plus, you have, like as Dave said, you have that upper deck too that's above it, so you have the upper deck, and then you have that view terrace and the dining terrace all together, connected by similar paving, plantar plaza expressions at the building face, et cetera.
Yeah, I still think that triangular spaces, even though I agree that the shape itself and the visuals that it have and everything, it lends to being a great space. I think it's accidental. I think it's orphaned from the rest of the open space system. I wouldn't say it's part of the open space system. It happened to be there because there's a straight room over there and there's a diagonal wall on the other side, but it's not articulated with anything of importance. Like, I would love to see an articulation between this and the courtyard.
Maybe it's not having got into the interior here, but maybe it's some sort of articulation of that node that can spill into one courtyard or spill into another courtyard. I think that's a really good point. So it's not really, you have a courtyard, you have one corridor here, one corridor here, you hit a special type of node that says, hey, you go to this courtyard, you go to this courtyard, but there's something there, I think.
You have a street, you have another street, and then you have a plaza that says there are two main plazas on both sides.
Right. No, I think that's a great point. We'll certainly study that.
That's all I have. I guess my fellow commissioners covered almost everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yeah, I have one question for the applicant. So fasten your seatbelts for this question. Have you considered underground parking so that you can also move the building a little bit more towards Rossmore Parkway Court and Rossmore Parkway? And then also it would alleviate a lot of the parking issues. It would and alleviate the having the parking lot in front of the building. And you could get more space around the perimeter and the back for courtyards, seating, gathering, etc.
Mark, are you want to take that one? Or you want me to?
I'm buckling up my seatbelt. Yeah, we did talk about it early on, and it was really cost reasons that we stayed to the on grade nature of the product. I don't know if height limit comes into play with a subterranean garage or not, and I don't recall if we were contemplating that at the time, but I can share with you it was really a cost consideration of building the concrete and excavating and that part of it.
That was my one question.
Okay, great. I have a couple questions. So I think somebody mentioned that there's potential for the driveway that comes off of Rossmore Parkway, so not Parkway Court, but Parkway, to scoot closer to the property line. So I like that. Not a question, but I would like, is there an opportunity to consider a better pedestrian connection to the Rossmore Shopping Center? I mean, I'm hearing they don't walk a lot, but I also hear that, you know, there may be a greater dependency to have access to things if they're not driving, you know, so I'd like to consider a better pedestrian connection. Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, the movement of this driveway down was a city public works idea, just getting away from here. So we're going to move this driveway all the way down to almost to the property line. But certainly, as Morgan's shown, kind of circulation coming out the front door, being able to come along the sidewalk here. We'll have to have some sort of crossing here, but we can try to align that as much as possible to access that space.
Yeah, and I think also in terms of pedestrian circulation, if ultimately those stalls along Rossmore Parkway Court remain, then you may want to look at a pedestrian connection from those too, because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like they have to go in through one of the driveways.
So Commissioner, are you talking about crossing here?
No, I mean, if you've parked on Rossmore Parkway Court and you want to get to the building, how do you do that safely?
Oh, certainly. So if you parked along any of these parallel, you would get out along the sidewalk, and then, yeah, you're saying just provide a safe access way across.
Right. Yeah,
Sure.
and I think in addition to that, can it be considered that whole arrival, which is demonstrated as the enhanced paving area right now, so you turn right onto Rossmore Parkway Court and then you do this quick right to come into this driveway. So that feels like a quick decision. And then in addition to that, you also have this quick decision of, am I going right and parking? Am I going left and parking? Am I going to the drop off? It's just this whole thing. So to make that comment to question, can we consider like how that can iron out to be a little less of this sticky decision point, and it can somehow integrate pedestrian safety too?
Sure. I think we're at a point where we're going to take a look at this entire entry sequence, pedestrian and vehicular. So certainly take that under advisement.
And I feel like, I don't know if maybe you guys consider like there's a one-way in and a one-way out or something. I don't know. There's so many moving parts of these driveways and stuff. I'm like flustered looking at it, let alone driving there or asking my grandma to try to drive there, you know? So it's, and integrating the pedestrian safety into that. I also noticed in a lot of your inspiration pictures for the architecture, like the Carneros and Solage, they have a lot of that indoor outdoor experience. And I think we've touched on that a little bit with the terrace, but I wanted to ask if there's anywhere else within the site plan where we might be able to pursue a little more of that indoor outdoor vibe.
Dave, talk about the library and the bistro area and how they open up to the courtyard.
Yeah, I think if you look at, this whole area here, which we needed to be able to study, I think there's the opportunity for, Marco's talking about the library here, and certainly this needs to be pretty important. It can't just be no man's land, right? Whether we open some of that up into this courtyard, I mean, we could also even maybe entertain from the main lobby to be able to have that experience out into here. But I would say that's a big opportunity, as well as over here. We wouldn't want to, I don't know, we talk about that, Marco, and whether we would want to introduce something like that on the memory care side too, just because it's a different type of population. But that might or may not be another opportunity. But Commissioner, I think that's a great idea to be able to get as many touching points of inside and outside as possible.
Yeah, and I think, is there, and Morgan mentioned that it may, if there ends up staying community gardens or something, that this little corner of the memory care could be where they put that, but is there another opportunity so that's not a throwaway space?
Yeah, I think as long as we make it a point that the guests and visitors here and the population do not have a direct access into this courtyard. We want to control this courtyard, either coming from this side or this side. It could be visual, but probably not pedestrian in nature. But yeah, I think there's a big opportunity to make that I think you're talking about how do you break this into different spaces that instead of one big L-shaped space. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
you want to be careful too, don't you? From the memory care facility, we just don't want to make sure that everything's open and clear too. It's just something that we'll have to look at. I just don't want someone to get like turned around a corner up in that area. So that's why we kind of just left it as planting and had the meandering path go through the broader courtyard itself. We just didn't want them to have a corner to get turned around into.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a loop, I know we always try to do loops so that there isn't a dead end or a beginning or an end. But I also wondered, in that memory courtyard, what do you think is the use of the active lawn? Is it really just a potential, set up a chair and chat with your grandkid, or do you guys have events that might actually get used in those little oval spaces?
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in first from an operations standpoint. It definitely is both. So you'll go out there, adult daughter will go visit with mom, and you'll sit outside for a while. Mom will want some alone time and just be out there just enjoying, the air and checking out the wind blowing through the trees and that sort of thing. But then also from an activities standpoint, we'll have the caregiver with 3 to 6 to 8 residents at a time sitting in one of those oval areas. They'll be bouncing a beach ball back and forth, that sort of agility type of exercise. And they have lots of those sorts of events that'll happen, jeepers, almost once a day.
Great. Okay. I think you already touched on this, Morgan, but I had noticed that there were trees at the view terrace that seemed to be blocking the view that they were talking about. So it sounds like you've already considered that. And that's not likely.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to work together. I didn't realize that there was going to be a back to that. So I think that's something definitely those are going to be gone in the next iteration. I think that's going to become more. It's going to be more of an open space there.
Okay, and then my final question, it looks like in that main courtyard, I'm imagining there's some kind of a shade structure that's over those tables and the little bar element. I just wanted to verify that because I can see the dashed line.
Yes, there would be a trellis there.
So that's the extent of the trellis structure. Does it cover the bocce court as well, or just the dining area?
Not in this iteration, it doesn't. It's just over the dining.
Okay. Okay, any other questions of our commissioners of the applicant? Great.
Just one quick one. The lower level units don't have doors opening into the courtyards, correct?
You mean like these units here that might be into here? No. in either use, in memory care or assisted living, we have no direct access.
Yeah, I figured in memory care, definitely not, but I just wanted to make sure on the other one. Thank you.
Okay.
Are those ladder pads the little like rectangular things we're seeing in the landscape?
Yes.
You know, they are. Contra Costa, as you probably know, they want them everywhere
Yeah,
on the
those are
front
fun.
and the back. So we have to weave the landscaping into that.
Okay. Okay. So if we have no other questions from our commissioners, we'll open it up to public comment at this time. Okay.
We have
Zoom will hang out for a minute.
one hand in the air.
Oh, great.
So that's Heidi.
Okay, thank you. I'm unmuted. I'm Heidi Bosselman. I'm the one that sent in the comments, and my husband and I live at 1999 Honeylocust Court, right around the corner from this development. The biggest issue is the insufficient parking. Code required parking is severely insufficient and grossly underallocates parking. Walnut Creek has other facilities that are similar, that have quite a bit more parking. For example, the Oakmont proposed facility has fewer units and 98 parking spots. Why does Holden think they can operate with 32 fewer parking spots than Oakmont? Oakmont is saying they have 45 employees for their fewer units. Again, why does Holden think they can operate what they call a quote best in class unquote facility with 1/3 fewer employees with more units? Their nearby Atria Valley View, who I spoke to today, was appalled at the staffing level. They said there was no way you could run this type of facility with 30 staff. Atria regularly has 50 staff and outside providers at their smaller facility that doesn't even include memory care, and they're not even an all assisted living facility either. A facility like Holden requires more staff, not less than Atria. None of this adds up. What happens if once built, if Holden has more than 30 staff people per shift, will they be required to add more parking? Is that even possible? Will somebody audit them to see what their staffing is, or are we just required to suffer as the nearby residential neighborhood when people start parking in front of our homes? And then street parking already happens on Rossmore Parkway Court along the center median. So how can they add 12 spots along the sidewalk and take away the existing street parking and count that for their parking requirement? That's not fair. Prior to John Muir's closure, street parking was parked 100% full in our neighborhood on those Rossmore streets and regularly overflowed into our residential neighborhood. Businesses must not be allowed to minimize parking to increase their profits, and employee parking must not be moved into residential neighborhoods, as that's a burden that homeowners should not be required to suffer. The second issue, which is also very severe, is the north entrance where that red brick area is up here. The main entrance exit, that's where John Muir also had an entrance exit, and there were problems with people not wanting to go all the way down Rossmore Parkway Court and make that U-turn, so they would come out driving the wrong way. And simply putting up a sign that says no left turn doesn't stop people from doing that, because it didn't work with John Muir. I know it doesn't work because I've seen so many people coming out the wrong way. So you need to move that entrance exit to further down Rossmore Parkway so people won't have the tendency to take the lazy way out and make the left because it's faster to get back to Rossmore Parkway. If you don't do that, you need to take out the median because you have to get these people on the right side of the street. Otherwise, it's a severe safety hazard. Thirdly, you need to address noise abatement and mechanical units. We're concerned that there'll be an increase in HVAC and other mechanical units on top of this building versus what John Muir had, and that will create a noise impact for the surrounding residential neighborhood. When DaVita Dialysis across the street was built, they addressed this by putting their mechanical in a ground level, smaller structure. And I'd like to ask that you look at putting your mechanical down below in that basement level so that the noise does not protrude out to the residential neighborhoods and create a noise nuisance for us. And then finally, I want to make sure the height limit is implemented and made sure that the building is not higher than the height limits allow. Whether that's, they don't get extra height just by grading the site, which I think is one thing the applicant said, that by grading they could have more height, and Haley indicated that wasn't true. So I also want to make sure that light pollution is minimized. The white siding is potentially a glaring, obnoxious whiteness at night, and if they have lights that don't just downlight, it could create a huge night lighting issue for us, where before this building was not operating in the evenings and weekends. So it can create a significant lighting issue for the neighborhood. And so that's where I would finish off. So I know I talked fast, but I think I was told I only had 2 minutes where I thought I had 3. So I tried to get through this really quickly. But the biggest 2 issues are parking is severely insufficient, and they should not be allowed to have insufficient parking. That's just going to exacerbate the prior parking issues that already exist from the other facilities in the neighborhood. And that entrance on the north off Rossmore Parkway Court has to move, because it's really dangerous when people come out going the wrong way and they don't even have a stop sign, and then they just come straight out onto Rossmore Parkway, and the people coming up Rossmore Parkway, like everyone in my neighborhood has to do to get to our homes, are then faced with a car coming out on a street going the wrong way. And no one has mentioned that. And that is really important that that's addressed. And that will require the applicant to move their entrance further down Rossmore Parkway, because if they don't move it further down, people are going to do exactly what the people in John Muir did. They come out and they make a left because it's easy. Oh, I don't see anyone, but they can't see anyone because the trees are in the way. And just because you can't see anyone doesn't give you permission to go the wrong way down a street. So that's all. Sorry, I was so fast, but I was afraid I'd run out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other raised hands for public comment? And again, if anyone would like to make a public comment, you can join our Zoom meeting or call in. And I don't have those numbers available in front of me anymore.
I'm seeing no other raised hands.
Okay. All right, so at this point, we'll bring it back to our commission. And this was just a study session, so we don't have to come to any sort of conclusion, but we can provide our comments of what we'd like to see next time.
I'll go first.
All right.
I thought this was a really good study session. Over the years, we've talked about what study sessions are supposed to be, and I thought this was a really good one. There was just enough information to understand and see where it goes and give the applicant direction as to what we want to see coming forward. So I think that was pretty well done. You know, when we looked at the shopping center across the street, there were a lot of concerns from the neighbors of noise and light pollution from below. So I think, you know, as we get deeper in it, I'm glad that the neighbor brought it up as far as, you know, making sure that lighting is shielded correctly so that it's not lighting up, and looking at mechanical equipment and how it sits and what kind it is and where it is, and its relationship to houses up above, because the sound does travel. That was a big issue when that was being developed originally. I think I really like the use of the building. I think it's obviously a perfect use to be able to be done here. You know, I understand with a 2-story building, the cost of underground parking would probably be prohibitive. It just is. You know, you talk about nanodoors. I know that the Apple Store downtown originally wanted to do them, but because of HVAC concerns and Title 24 energy, they weren't able to do it in our environment. So it's something you have to look at very carefully. Somebody had mentioned also the barbecue areas. My mother's has a place like that, and as the applicant said, you know, being able to use not for the users but for gatherings, I think is a nice touch. And maybe not in the middle of the space, maybe over to the edge, but I think it's still a good thing to be able to do. You know, sometimes my mother's place has some raised planters. You know, you have those oval planters in there. Maybe there's planters that are raised, so you have other places to sit. We're always looking for a place where we can talk. And sometimes if all the seats are taken, some of those places, you know, it can even be one of the C3 planters could be raised enough to be able to sit on the edge, possibly. I'm not saying it has to. And again, as Haley said, you know, things like heights of walls, how far to the ground in the sections we'll be taking a look at. Again, we know you're going to come back with more accurate plans, and they're going to be coordinated between civil and landscape, so I don't have to harp on any of that kind of stuff. It's a very tight project. You know, I think as you get some of these things to work, and I drove it today, and, you know, I almost made a left onto Rossmore Parkway Court, because going down the road and turning around and passing all the cars parked there was kind of a pain. And so I think that you will have to look at that entrance and how you do that and still make you know, able to come in and have a safe drop off will be interesting, but I think you'll be able to do it. You know, I would still love to see a few more parking spaces, even if it was over parked a little bit. I do have a concern about the neighborhood parking. And I think the city's going to have to look at this, whether maybe some of the other parking lots that are around it are underutilized. And I think that maybe somebody from the city should go there and walk it and maybe talk to some of the neighbors about how they're parking on their own property and they're not utilizing their spaces enough. Maybe they need more compact spaces and everybody's just spilling out onto this, which, as the neighbor said, they're going to spill out into the neighborhood. I think most of them are going to spill out into the shopping center, which will be just as bad. Again, I love the fact that all the units are on green, spaces that open out. I think that's really well laid out. Again, we talked about little, architectural detail, detailing the pop outs, detailing the towers, looking at amount of handicap parking, and detailing out the activities in the spaces are obviously, as you can tell, things we'll be looking for when it comes back. And I'm assuming it's going to come back. So I think that's all very good. I think it's a good use, good start, and it's going to be a quality project. So I do think you're going to get there. And I'm okay with the minor height changes. I know that elevator towers can do it. The little roof on the entrance, if it's a few feet over, that doesn't bother me at all. So I would definitely be apt to approve those. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess I'll jump in next. If that's okay. My biggest concern is that I think the circulation is awkward, the vehicular circulation, and I think it's way too tight at the entry. So my biggest concern is I think it does have to be reworked. I agree with the neighbor's comment that that entryway right at the corner won't work. I was thinking how I would come in, and I would probably come in Rossmore Parkway, come in off of Rossmore Court, but then I'd have to kind of do a donut around that island if I was there to pick up somebody, and then I'd circle back around and have to go out on Rossmore Parkway. But if I'm going to have to make a right turn, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cheat and go left to get to Tice Valley. So all these things just are not clean. And I think they need to be worked out better. And I think it is too tight. I think there needs to be a lot more space to accommodate more cars for pickup, buses, and outdoor seating. So that's my biggest concern, I think, with this project right now. Some of the other concerns I have, just the architecture, like I said, that whole entry, I think needs to be studied. I think it's a little bit out of scale and needs to be, some of the elements needs to be looked at. The landscaping, again, this is a study session, so, but it kind of irks me, you read your notes and everything, and really what you did, you just took some plants from using the Santa Clara water statements and all that, and you really didn't put too much effort into this site, and so it's kind of like, why bother? And so I would appreciate at least going with the Contra Costa C3s, so you may have to look at all your plants again, whether they're still going to be low or water or medium is probably going to change. So when I see that, I don't really take stock in this picture because I don't get a feeling there's really too much thought at this level. But on the other hand, it is a study session and you have to wait. One example would be the bioretention. I mean, they were set out from an engineering point of view. That's probably where they're going to be. And the landscaping has no relationship to those at all. You have trees and bioretention areas. Your bocce ball court is halfway in a bioswale. So it just wasn't looked at very carefully. So again, if you're going to present something, let's make it real. I would suggest on the South Bank, rather than just leaving it as an undeveloped area, not to landscape it, but there's an opportunity there for the people in the dining or some of the residents in the south end to look out on that, and maybe that could be cleaned up, or maybe there's a couple of view corridors. You put some little element out there, that just enhance their living ability when they're in the apartments or whatever. So again, instead of just ignoring that whole South Bank. And again, I'm not suggesting that you landscape it per se, but again, there might be an opportunity for some visual cues, or clean it up. So those are my comments. I mean, in general, I'm in favor of the project, of the use, but again, I agree with Joseph. The parking I think is underparked, irregardless of what the city says. the practicality and my observations, for example, at Byron Park, all those employees, they're parking off-site on that dirt lot. They can't accommodate them on site. So again, just as one, again, anecdotal example, you know, that it didn't work, even though they met the parking from the city's requirement. So I think that needs to be studied quite a bit more. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. We'll just follow the same order. So Carlos, any final comments?
Yes. First, thank you, Heidi. I think you brought a great perspective to what we've been talking about and things that were briefly mentioned, but you actually, as neighbor, brought the neighborhood thinking into the front court. So that was important. I like the building. I mean, I like the building generally. I like the architecture. It's I'm going to use the word austere in a good sense. It's not flashy. It's not trying to say something that doesn't belong to this place or to its use. I like the scale. I like the color palette. I like the courtyards. I mean, I think that basically or one of the most important things here for me is the austere architecture that are actually complemented with these courtyards that bring a lot of vitality to the whole building. I think that there's a great opportunity for more articulation between courtyards and I'm going to call them the public buildings, like the dining area and all those areas. As they are right now, they seem to be hidden and they seem to be secondary. They could be brought to the limelight and make them really special buildings. And that's going to take probably modifying widths and lengths and shapes and other things. But I think there's a great opportunity there. I like the hierarchy of the spaces. I like the building. I like the way this building is going, and I expect to see a lot more for the next iteration.
Wonderful, thank you. Charles?
Yes, thank you. Overall, as the other commissioners have noted, I'm supportive of the project. I think it's a great project. Certainly fits within the use of the area. And it's always nice to replace an abandoned building with something, you know, shiny and new and something that's going to be used. I mean, for me, when you showed early on some of your prior developments and what they looked like, I was comparing that. So I live on the other end of Walnut Creek, and I was comparing that to the Via Monte project that got built recently over here by the Orchard Shopping Center. And your other projects looked much like the Via Monte, and the Via Monte is a beautiful implementation of a project. And this one is a little different looking. And I think the big difference between this project and what I think I was seeing with your photos of your existing projects is that you've got this parking lot in front. And I've given similar feedback at a different study session to another project. I think when you put the parking in front, even though it's the practical, most cost-effective way to do it, it generally, for lack of a better word, it cheapens the look of the building, and it feels almost more like hotelish than a residential care project. And then also on top, layered onto that, you don't have the land on this site to provide what I think everybody has stated so far: sufficient parking and an appropriate traffic flow. So I'll still, because I have the luxury of saying this because I'm not writing the check to build this. I mean, to me, this project, if I could recommend something to make it way better, it would be to underground parking, get that building pulled up a little bit more towards the two frontage streets. You get a lot more flexibility with what you can do around the perimeter for the residents on the perimeter. And might give you enough room for those outer perimeters where residents could have doors that go out, not just to the hallway. And these seating areas, patios, etc., can be larger. I love the courtyards inside. I think that I think the memory care one, again, one of the things I saw at Viamonte was a resident maintained garden. So the residents were actually doing a beautiful job with gardens and vegetable gardens. It was amazing. And that, I think the way they accomplished storage in that project that could possibly work for you too is almost, there were utility rooms where the doors face the inner courtyard, and that's where they were able to store the equipment, from what I recall. If we can go, can we go to A9, the architectural rendering? I think we're still on the applicant screen. You think there's this one, and then there was another one. So overall, I like the gables and the overall design. There was another page before or after this. That one, perfect. So in looking at these two elevations, looking at the northwest elevation, I'm not as much of a fan. By the way, I'm not an architect, so I don't have, I'm just gonna talk in layman's terms. The lower roof line on that northwest elevation, I'm not as much of a fan of as I am looking at the north elevation, where the roof line that goes down the longitudinal axis of the building is higher up. It just looks better to me aesthetically. On the flip side, I look at it and it's an awful long run of that single roof line with repeating gables. And I don't know if there's any way to build a little bit of variation into it. But outside of that, I think that's a nicer looking elevation than what you've got going on that upper northwest. Now, granted, I see your height restriction line dropping down there, so that might be why you had to do that. So I just wanted to share that. And I'm just checking all my notes. Yeah, those are all my comments overall. Oh, the one other comment, I agree with the other commissioners. I think the little tiny areas that are going above the height limit, I would be in favor of giving an exception to that as well. It's very minimal. The majority of the structure is going to be within the height limit the way it's laid out here. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Great. All right. So I hope to bring it on home, short and sweet. So yes, I'd like to reiterate, we obviously need to study the circulation. I'd love to enhance the view terrace and emphasize indoor-outdoor experiences. I'd like to have you guys consider the connection to the Rossmore Shopping Center. And then I also was looking at the plan while we were chatting, and so many people mentioned sitting with their loved ones. So just considering a lot of seating opportunities, maybe some of those walkways that are creating some connection, especially in that main courtyard, just have a lot of seating. And then I hate to be this way, but I definitely hear that parking is a challenge. I know it's a challenge all over our city. So one of the things I want to throw out there is maybe ask the design team and beyond to consider other opportunities, because I hate to keep seeing a world where so much is driven by the car. I feel like we're trying to evolve to a world that's not as about the car and like giving more space to a parking lot. And I don't know the solution. I'm sorry to sound really Pollyanna, but maybe we can like incentivize employees with some kind of a program to carpool or park elsewhere, use public transit, something like that. Because I'm hoping that one day we can move towards a design world where we're not all about parking lots, and maybe our electric cars will just drive home and park themselves somewhere else in some parking lot where none of us are, right? So I don't know. I just would like to throw out another idea to try to solve the parking issue that maybe isn't continually making the cars the primary of our experiences on these spaces. So I just had to end it on that note. So with that, unless we have anything else from commissioners, we will close this item. Thank you guys for your time on that. back to my agenda. Where am I? Where'd my agenda go? There I am. Okay. Item 5, commission considerations. Portion of the agenda is for items that are not required to be publicly noticed, but where a formal staff presentation, question and answer is helpful. Anything there for us tonight?
Chip, you're on.
No, I'm sorry, there isn't.
Thank you. All right, and then item 6, commission member and staff reports or announcements.
I may be out of town some of next month. I may miss 1 or 2 meetings.
Okay.
I want to keep this short. It's probably not appropriate here, but you know, our fearsome leader Ken is retiring, and I just want maybe a nod at this point. I was thinking of just a tight design review, members and staff getting together. And I know concerns with COVID and so forth, but if people thought that was a good idea, then maybe I would further this idea off, you know, privately.
Love that. I'd be there.
Yep, I'm good with that. I think that'd be good.
And again, I'm assuming everybody's been invited to the thing on October 7th.
Yep. Welcome, Chip. I know we've seen you in here all the time anyway, but it's nice to have you formally.
Why, thank you. And it's an honor for me to take the chair of Mr. Ken Nodder, who's been here for 34 years. Started as an intern.
Wow.
Worked his way all the way up there to being the secretary to this commission. So I'm honored to be here. Hope to be here for a while. And I do have a note on Commissioner Killian's suggestion, and that would all be good, but there's a couple of rules. One is that somebody like myself would need to be there to make sure that there isn't any shop talk, because that's the Brown Act exception for celebratory actions. So we just have to stay clear of any shop talk, should we do that.
I think we can manage that.
Yeah.
You just invited yourself.
Yeah, is that a way of getting an invitation, Chip?
Yeah, that's it. No, I usually get in. Yeah.
Okay.
Tough crowd, Chip, for your
I know,
first
right?
night. Tough crowd.
Okay, anything else, you guys? All right, then item 7, adjournment. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Casey.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.